Global Muchidão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billy.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this session, Turning Targets into Action, Climate Resilient Food and Agriculture under the Global Goal on Adaptation. My name is Karina Rolli. I'm here representing a global humanitarian network called ADRA. We are represented in more than 120 countries, and we fight for frontline communities who are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis. As we know, frontline communities are forced to shoulder the cost of inaction. In global policy spaces, including the GGA process, we believe that pushing for adaptation commitments that are rooted in justice and equity. We all know the urgency. The climate crisis is disrupting food production, increasing water scarcity, and the world is watching how the GGA will deliver on its promise. Today, we want to explore on how these indicators can actually drive action, not just reporting. We will discuss with our esteemed panelists how science, policy, and implementation can come together to inform the GGA process, and we will discuss how reliable, predictable finance can create change on the ground. It's a pleasure to guide you through this conversation and how the GGA can transport, specifically on food and agriculture indicators, into real-world resilience for farmers, communities, and our ecosystem, which we are fighting for. Thank you all for joining us. And now it is my great pleasure to set the scene and invite Dr. Lucy Njuguna. Lucy is a postdoctoral fellow at the Alliance of Biodiversity International in SIAT, where she co-leads the Adaptation Insights project. She is a technical expert under the UAA Belém work program and a lead author on the UNEP Adaptation Gap Report. Her work focuses on adaptation indicators, climate, livestock systems, and science policy integration. So Lucy, I'd like to give you the stage to set the scene.
Okay, thank you very much, Karina, and hello to everyone. I'm going to compete speaking above the rain, so let me know in case you can't hear me. But where I come from, rain is a sign of a blessing, so may the blessings rain upon us. So I'm going to set the scene by just providing a sort of behind-the-scenes picture of the work that we've been doing in developing indicators for the Global Goal on Adaptation. As Karina mentioned, myself, I was one of the 7 experts that were working on indicators for the food and agriculture targets. And we know that the process that we've had, especially under the UAE Belém work program, has been quite a historic process because we've seen science directly informing how we define our targets, how we design indicators that are used to measure global goals. The SB chairs constituted a team of 78 experts who are supposed to come in to provide technical inputs in informing how we design indicators for measuring the GGA targets. And for the food and agriculture group in particular, we were very deliberate in making sure that we are using science-informed approaches to even design a framework that would then inform the kind of indicators that we've put forward for consideration at COP30. And one of the main highlights in the way we were developing the indicators is the use of an impact pathways-based approach. So this is where we were trying to unpack what does resilience mean for different contexts? What does resilience mean for a livestock system in Africa? What does it mean for crop production in Asia? And through this, we were able to identify various types of actions that are undertaken by various stakeholders. and at the same time being deliberate in having indicators that not only capture the actions that are being undertaken, but also indicators that can be able to show us how effective those adaptation actions are. So if you look at the list of 10 indicators that we have at the moment, the first 5 relate to adaptation actions. So that's where we are looking at uptake of adaptation practices and technologies, policy processes, investments, and the other 5 that are part of the list are looking at outcomes. So they are outcome-oriented, trying to understand, are we effectively responding to climate change to improve food security, to make sure that we don't have malnutrition, and at the same time, we are improving the livelihoods and welfare of various stakeholders. So we can see there has been a very clear integration of science as we get to develop the indicators, but that's just half the journey. We still need to develop methodologies. We still need the evidence that is required to operationalize those indicators. So that's why I think the conversation today is very important, to be able to identify what can different stakeholders be able to do to bring on the table to make sure that we can go beyond having targets, go beyond having indicators, to actually having the evidence that we need to operationalize those indicators. And I'm so happy that we'll be able to hear from various panelists. We look forward to hearing from the negotiators to know what is going on in the negotiation rooms, what can we anticipate at the end of the COP, and do we have indicators that we'll be taking home with us? And even as we close COP30, how can science continue contributing to building the evidence base to understand the progress we are making in adaptation? So I really look forward to the conversation and looking forward to also engaging with the audience as we progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy, for setting the scene. And with this, I would say we can head right into the panel. And I would like to invite all of the panelists onto stage with me. Our guiding question will be simple yet powerful. How can the GGA indicators for food and agriculture translate ambition into measurable outcomes for people and the ecosystems? And I'm very happy to be joined by this esteemed panelists, which I will introduce shortly. And what we'll do then is that I will ask targeted questions to the panelists, for which they have 5 to 6 minutes to respond. And then we will open the floor to you as the audience. I would like to first introduce Anne. Anne Roth is a senior policy advisor at the German Federal Ministry for Agriculture, Food and Regional Identity. She works in the Climate Change and Water Unit, focusing on international climate policy and UNFCCC negotiations related to agriculture and food systems, which we work very closely with in our advocacy work, so it's very nice to have you, Anna. From EU perspective, we have Anna Salminen, who's a chief specialist at the Finnish Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, working on national climate policy planning and implementation. She leads the EU group on agriculture, forestry, and land use in UNFCCC, and her work focuses on aligning national action with global adaptation and mitigation agendas. From a science background and perspective, we have Dr. Marshall Bernot, who is a senior natural resources officer at FAO's Office for Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment. He leads FAO's climate change team and plays a key role in the FAST partnership, which I'm sure many of you know, and the FAO's engagement in the UNFCCC process. He has contributed to the IPCC work for more than 20 years and is a global expert on climate metrics, risk management, and science policy interfaces. Good to have you, Marshall. And then, last but not least, I would like to introduce Alvin. Alvin Munyasya is the Advocacy and Communication Specialist for Action Against Hunger in the Horn and East Africa. I do want to say, I don't know, it's maybe the 4th or 5th panel we're doing together, Alvin. And it's always good to see you at COP. He works very closely with grassroots communities and regional coalitions, and he will bring in the very important perspective of implementation on the ground to this conversation. He works within coalitions to address the root causes of hunger and drive people-centered advocacy. He's also a Yali Fellow, founder of the Center for Climate Action, and serves on multiple boards supporting locally led initiatives. So welcome, everyone. And for the first question, I would like to turn to you, Anna. I mean, being in the German Pavilion and being a representative of the German government, my question to you would be, from the perspective of your ministry, what is the current state of food and agriculture indicators concerning adaptation in Germany, and what lessons from this experience can inform the ongoing GGA discussions?
Thanks, Karina, and thank you for inviting me to this panel here at the German Pavilion. It's my first time to speak here, so I feel honored to speak on behalf of my ministry. Adaptation in Germany is also more important, has become more important recently in the last years. And this is also why the federal government set climate change adaptation on a higher political level. We've been working on adaptation for more than 10 years already. Already in 2008, we had the first climate change adaptation strategy in Germany, but just in 2023, we put the adaptation topic into law. So the first Federal Climate Adaptation Act was agreed upon, and it sets a binding framework for the federal government, for the federal states and municipalities with legal targets for climate change adaptation. And in the Climate Change Act, the renewing of the climate change strategy was foreseen, and this was agreed upon just last year. And we have 7 clusters, and they include land and land use with targets for biodiversity, soil, agriculture, and forest management. And for these 7 clusters, we have concrete goals and indicators which are still under discussion within the whole government. And also, of course, the Agriculture Ministry is included in that. So for the targets for agriculture in Germany, we have, for example, we are discussing the strengthening the resilience of soil, agricultural soils, and adapting our farms to climate change. Setting indicators very complex in agriculture, so we have also are discussing sub-targets, e.g. for the soil, we discuss the carbon storage as a sub-target, and of course the indicators needs to be science-based, so it's also good to have our science here representative on the panel. And in those science-based discussions, we include our federal research institutes to be able to set science-based and evidence-based indicators for our monitoring, because the monitoring is of course crucial to be able to report back. And in our strategy we have reporting every 4 years is foreseen. So the first report under the new strategy is supposed to be in 2 years. And which lessons can be learned from this whole process in Germany? As I said, the indicator discussion in agriculture is complex, so including science is more important than ever. And also, we need to have a whole inclusive processes. Also, the stakeholders, farmers, we need to get the data from the farmers. So this is important. And what I also wanted to say is that not only on the national level Germany is working on adaptation, but we also support other countries with the integration of food and agriculture, for example, into their national adaptation plans, together with FAO through one of our ICI projects, the International Policy Initiative of the government. In the SCALA project, we support 10 countries with the integration of agriculture into their national adaptation plans.
Thank you so much, Anna, for setting the national scene. I don't know if the people online can hear it, but there's a lot of rainfall. And I don't know if you can imagine, but we're like in this giant tent that sometimes, I don't know, reminds you of like the stomach of a giant like animal or something like that. And there are like no windows, but you can hear the rain pouring down. And as Lucy said, like rain can be a blessing, and absolutely we should read it at that. And then I also hear the other side of that, the Amazon is not happy with the negotiations, so it's sending us rain. So there are both perspectives on this. But yeah, it's extremely loud, and I hope everybody can hear us clearly at home in here. And with that, I would like to move to the coordination and negotiation side. So Anna, if I may, from the negotiation room, what would you say is the maturity of the GGA indicator framework for food and agriculture currently? And what signals are you seeing regarding how close parties are coming to like a good outcome with this?
Thank you for inviting me, and I must start by saying that I'm so happy to be here in Belém. Also enjoying this tropical rain I've never experienced before. And indicators, it all started 10 years ago. We have to remember like this is something we agreed on in Paris Agreement. And so maybe it takes also like, it's also a signal that it's not an easy task to first to define the target, but then to go more into the details how to implement the target. And that's what we are here now at, that this question how to implement that target, how to measure that target. And that's also very much linked to finance. But then again, finance is not a topic to be discussed under Global Goal on Adaptation, but I want to mention it in that sense that there are definitely also different expectations around parties discussing these indicators now. And because there are also indicators can be also addressing targets or like measuring measuring finance. And there are linkages, of course. So that is one issue. Maybe I mentioned that we come here with a bit different expectations. That's always the case in these negotiations. I'm personally not sitting in that GGA room. I'm sitting in the agriculture room, but that's when I've been discussing with the colleagues from there, it sounds a bit similar in this case. Yes, and of course, all of these, the pressure is on us. It's on all of us. I think there is no one willing to achieve these targets of global goal on adaptation. We all know how important it is. And that makes it also more difficult to parties to step outside of their comfort zone regarding the expectations. So these are the issues we deal with in the negotiations. But the news I've heard from today's discussion is that they would have been getting closer to the 60 indicators, which was from coming down from 100 to 60. But everything is still possible. There are also ideas of maybe doing like deciding on part of these indicators here and leaving rest of it to the future. Maybe also continuing this kind of technical support to the process. But that's all still open, so I am not there to tell you what happens actually. So yeah, it's definitely exciting to all of us. And but then maybe just to address that it is important. It was one of the most important issues we were about to be here to discuss, to have a result on it. It's important for Brazil. At least Brazil has been expressing this need to make conclude this topic, and also the and why it's important. It's important to understand how we advanced on certain level of these measures on strengthening resilience in our food system, and in many other topics too. And one issue is of course the I think there are difficulties regarding this national finance indicators, referring to national finance, also linked more broadly to these discussions going in the finance room. So let's see what happens. But I count on also the support of the presidency to get some result on this. So not yet predicting us discussing this in Addis Ababa in 2 years' time, but that's also an option which has been discussed and also maybe communicated. Like the messages are also keep coming from the rooms, and partly rumors, and mostly they come a bit late, so that that might not anymore be like the current topic to be solved. So, but let's, so I'm sorry about not being able to predict more closely what happens, but let's hope that there is going to be the solution, because we all know that also us on national level, we know that that's not an easy task, because they have to be applicable in so different like the context, and also they are not supposed to be making it more difficult and more expensive to the country. It should be easily implementable indicators, so that's not an easy task for anybody. But we have, as said and well explained, we have a good scientific-based ground on this work, so that's the best base to build on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. And of course, these are ongoing discussions, so everybody, we have to watch this space very closely to see where we're going to end in the end. And thank you also for mentioning that there might be a possibility that this will be moved to Ethiopia in COP32. I think that, like this, indicators are really good, strong indicators, ambitious indicators are really good, but without financing, we might risk overburdening countries who are already burdened by the climate crisis. So these are things that always have to go hand in hand, but these are difficult discussions, of course. With this, talking about exactly this topic, I would like to move maybe to the science policy side and methodological side. So, Marshall, what would you say? How can national systems align with this GGA indicator framework without causing more burdens to the countries? And in your eyes, in your sense, like, what does good alignment look like?
Okay. Can you hear me well? Okay. Sorry, my voice is running out after 10 days. Thanks first for the organizer to be part of this Moutiron. You can see so many partners trying to join forces for that meaningful discussion. And I'm really at the science policy interface. So I started as a scientist, now I'm at FAO, so mostly on the policy side. I'm trying to combine both. This is what we need. So it's not new. IPCC, Lucy mentioned what IPCC will do in that cycle, but we have seen that already in the previous cycle, all the urgency that we have for adaptation. So why we need adaptation? Simple. Because we need to, we are seeing the limit of mitigation. We are not acting fast enough. And basically now we are facing a lot of extreme weather. Here it's normal, every day is like that in the Amazon normally. But in the world, so we are seeing that a lot of extreme weather putting a burden on top of people, on top of 1.2 billion of people that that their livelihood is directly connected with agri-food system. Lucy remind us the work that is being proposed here with the 10 indicators, and this is something very interesting. You mentioned that half of them are really focused on effort to respond to climate shock, and half of them, 5, are on impact of climate-related drivers on event. So it's a complementarity of indicators. Even more, those indicators cover all the agri-food part. So it's not only the production level, but it's also the supply, the distribution, and the nutrition part. So it's all not only agriculture, it's food security. So this is really what we want to see. What FAO is doing, so let me show you this. It's just a print of the cover. FAO today, we launched together with our partner as part of the SCALA program, supported by Germany, an assessment of where agri-food system is in national adaptation plan. So it has been launched today, and 82% of the country mention adaptation for the agri-food in that sector. And even more, some countries are ready to align with some indicators that are already proposed. So it's even more important. So you have also a readiness from countryside to waiting for the negotiators to agree on a set of indicators. Hopefully, some will be accepted, if not all. I really hope that the 10 of agriculture will be accepted. We know how difficult it is to have a discussion that is sectoral within the UNFCCC. It's a big challenge, but we really hope that this will function. It's exactly 45% of the country already identify adaptation indicator aligned with the target 9B that you have all the experts that you were able to screen from 1,000 to 100 and then to 10 for dedicated to agriculture. We have different programs where we are already engaging, supporting the country. We are not waiting the result of the negotiation. Things are already happening on the ground. And you were mentioning, I guess it's you, Anne, you were mentioning the SCALA program, where we support concretely, for instance, Egypt on their monitoring, evaluating, and learning system, the MEL system. We have also concrete action with other programs, the SAGA program, where we work on local adaptation with local farmers, local women community in Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, and Haiti. And through the SCALA program, we go also broader. We have Tunisia, we have Panama. So basically, we already have a lot of concrete example where the need is, what the people are really facing and doing to face that challenge, and on the policy side, so we have already the willingness to just waiting for the decision to say, okay, now we have the indicators on how we are ready to move. Then after we will need science. We will need science because some indicators that might be agreed here, you will need then to have exactly how to do that, how to collect the information to build on those indicators. So the process for us is really just beginning, but beginning in the let's say negotiation side, but it's a continuum because things are already happening on the ground. And here I cannot miss to thank my colleague Julia Wolf. She's the deputy team leader. She was not able to be here for the second week, but she's really the one that drives us in the adaptation stream, and she was also part of the team of experts together with Lucy. And we are really eager to see that science policy multi-round arriving to something concrete for the benefits of the people. Because as FAO, our main goal is really zero hunger and livelihood. So zero hunger, no poverty. So this is what we really want to see. So we have plenty of people putting a little bit of burden on top of the shoulder of the negotiator, but waiting for you is billion of people waiting for you. It's not the 50,000 people here. It's a billion of people living from agri-food system that are just waiting for you to agree on a certain indicator, and then the science will provide the metrics. So thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Marshall. That was a perfect segue into looking at implementation. And just because I'm sure that Julia is watching because she was one who helped put together the session. And Julia, if you're watching, greetings to you. So talking about implementation and how exactly how the science informs the indicators, and the indicators have to be ambitious, and then how it translates on the ground. Alban, I would like to ask you, from your work across the Horn and East Africa, what does locally led implementation of adaptation actually look on the ground?
Thank you, Karina, and fellow panelists, and always a pleasure to be at the German Pavilion. On behalf of Action Against Hunger, we really thank you, the GFFO office, for our partnership. As we discuss indicators, I am a humanitarian working closely with communities on the front line of climate, conflict, and hunger, addressing the root causes of hunger. And as I come here, I carry the voices of those communities to even unpack and understand what these indicators mean. And as I was here, I just received a report from Somalia, where 4.4 million people are expected to face food insecurity by December. 1.85 million children suffering from acute malnutrition already, and 421,000 people are facing severe acute malnutrition. That is how dire the situation is in the Horn of Africa. And when we talk about climate change, that is the level of impact that can demonstrate the importance of this discussion of adaptation and global solidarity and partnership in addressing the root causes of hunger. For us, as Action Against Hunger, implementation should be useful, actionable, and mutually understood, where these indicators reflect the realities of the communities in the front line of climate change. These indicators are needed, and it is important that we also align them to the African continental processes that already exist, like the national adaptation plans. Earlier this year, we had a convening in Kampala, where we did launch the Kampala Declaration to renew the Malabo Declaration on the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, which have been a champion because it is the instrument in which I believe, and maybe Dr. Lucy, you might guide me later, but it is the instrument for us that we believe guides investments into smallholder farmers. And it has also some indicators there that may reflect that of the global goal on adaptation. Meaningful finance and support must follow the means of implementation. That means that we need to unlock the requisite financing accompanied by the technical know-how as well as capacity building, and ensure that we work together to enable all this to trickle down to the communities in Somalia that I've just mentioned, in Ethiopia, which I've not given you an example, in Kenya, in the southern African part of the continent. So therefore, I want to agree with you. A strong COP30. What we need here is bold leadership, a vision that would move into action and implementation, and ensure that people are put at the center of all this. And I doubt by the time you come to Addis Ababa, I can only imagine how many children would have been wasted, how many children would have faced stunting, and how many communities already would have died because of the drought and the floods that may come from today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. Yeah, I think it's so important to understand that all of these technical discussions that we're having, and sometimes it feels so disconnected, especially also as humanitarians working with frontline communities. I mean, we know the pictures and everything, and we know the data and the numbers, but like that this actually has a real life consequence on people, on vulnerable communities who are already, as climate change or the climate crisis is a threat multiplier, you know, being in areas of the world that are already burdened by conflict, by war, by water scarcity, by land management issues, by land ownership issues, and then having also like climate unresilient food systems. Like, we always have to think about that this should always be a people-centered conversation. And we're all fighting for it, but thank you for reminding us of this. I have just a small follow-up question for you, if you don't mind. But before I head into that, I do want to tell the audience that we have a microphone here, which I will hand around. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please be prepared right now, because I'm going to open the floor in just a moment. Alvin, I would like to ask you, like, as you're following the discussions on the indicator framework, where do you see, from your perspective, where do you see the biggest alignment, and where would you see the biggest disconnect, looking at the lives of people who are actually targeted?
The issue of coordination, mobilizing finance at scale is quite important. And when I look back internally into the African continent, we have committed already through African governments to mobilize 100 billion by 2035 in order to realize the CADEP strategy. And I am not sure whether that is aligned with the NDCs and the NAPs, and whether that is aligned with the indicators on the global goal on adaptation, and whether that would be the vehicle that would enable these resources to trickle down. Science and innovation is key. Harnessing research and blending this with traditional knowledge to drive adaptation and regeneration, regenerative agriculture. It is very important for us to also listen to local communities and the kind of knowledge that they have in order for us to leverage local and traditional agricultural practices that would complement the indicators that exist within the global goal on adaptation.
Yeah, thank you for addressing this issue of coordination. I think it's really relevant. We just heard in September a really powerful example of Yemen about how this internal coordination in a country between different ministries and sectors has been, and also like private and public sector has been able to heighten the level of this cooperation in the country, and also integration of this knowledge into the national plans, of the knowledge of the needs and all of it. But I think the indicators are therefore that they are means of communication of the situation, where the needs are, where the challenges are, and then also to measure how we improve. And that has been actually was, according to this example in Yemen, being able to bring the country from this being target for aid to being a target for climate finance. So I think that kind of examples are therefore for us to learn. I think it's been shared on the Standing Committee on Finance page, this as an example, but I think the coordination was the key issue he also mentioned.
And on that, you remember earlier this year we just came back from Nutrition for Growth in Paris, and member states also went back internally, and they had to come up with the indicators for nutrition financing that should flow into the countries, and there were commitment also from multilateral organizations and from international governmental organizations, including governmental organizations, on what they are going to do. So the coordination between ministries of health, ministries of finance, and ministers of agriculture, and the indicators therein being developed within the technical bodies of these ministries could be something that we need to relook at as we rethink to renew our commitment into investments and injecting resources into adaptation.
Thank you so much. I can see that this has really triggered a conversation, but I'm happy about it. I will get back to the floor in just a second, but Marshall?
Just to join you on that, in the analysis that I was showing that have been launched today, there was a real call from countries for more coordination, but coordination going together with capacity building. Because then you need also to build the capacity in the different line ministries to ensure that basically you will have the people that then will be there present to report. On that, to join that Moutiron, we are already, we also work close with the WWF on climate focus. We just released a toolkit, it's a nature positive agri-food system toolkit, where you have a part that can help to strengthen the different MEL systems, so monitoring, evaluation, and learning system, on all that, thanks to, again, the support of GIZ on BMZ. So we really want to recognize or hear all the support that if we can do and support the country, it's because also we always have generous donors behind. So it's also a plea and a call for having other donors in the room. Please join that Moutiron of donors also to help us.
Speaking of continuing the conversation, capacity building was my buzzword. I wanted to pick up. I totally agree that it's really important to really train the farmers on the ground for climate resilient agricultural methods like agroecology, regenerative agriculture, organic farming, like all these possibilities that do not have positive outcomes for adaptation, but also adaptation co-benefits, also storing carbon in the soil, for example. And we as the Agriculture Ministry also work very closely together with the African Union in our agricultural policy dialogue, and we support countries from the African continent. There in Zambia, for example, we do have an agricultural training center where young farmers are trained and they learn about climate resilient agricultural practices. So this is also support from our side.
Thank you, and that's actually my cue, because I would like to add like the role of civil society and local actors in this entire process, because as frontline communities, like the capacity building, the role that they play in their own agriculture system, it's their ground, it's their family, it's their communities, and so on. They have ownership towards that, and local organizations who have the trust and the leadership of exactly those communities can also help building these climate resilient livelihoods when it comes to regenerative agriculture, to soil management, something that very often is forgotten, how important soil is for carbon storage and mitigation efforts. So thank you for highlighting this. And with this, climate finance also has to be accessible for civil society actors and has to be redistributed right to the communities, because as long as climate finance doesn't flow to the affected communities, it is not effective. And now I would like to open the floor to the audience. Is there anyone who would like to share a reflection or a question to the panelists? I would like to ask you to introduce yourself and then also just mention who your question is directed to. Thank you. I'll just hand you the microphone.
Good afternoon. Coming with this last remark, my name is Hector. I work for TRIAS, a Belgian NGO, working in 19 different countries on agricultural and economic development with family entrepreneurs, either rural and non-rural. We've been hearing about turning the targets into action. How do we get the data? How do we do that? How do you see, and it will be for any of the panelists, of all of them if they want to intervene, How do you see using that information to unlock the blended finance or the climate finance that we have been hearing a lot within these days?
I wanted to actually look at a couple of questions, but I'm going to leave it at that and ask the panel to respond.
Because we don't have the mean to monitor what is happening. So this is one element. It's not the only element, but it's an important element. So you need to have, when you want to attract finance, you need to work on 3 pillars. Simple. Policy, because if it's not in the policy, no one will invest in something that is not in the policy. The data, because if you don't have the data, the capacity building, you will not have the right policy. And then you can activate the finance part, using first the public finance as a lever to attract and to show to the private finance, yes, that sector is attractive, and you are not just investing for agri-food, you are investing also for people. So you have a lot of co-benefits. Trying to be brief.
Yes, I think the attractiveness of investments is always interesting, and also as climate finance is extremely risk averse, we also have to look at the fragility of context, right? Because exactly where these food systems are specifically insecure, it is also in fragile contexts. Yeah.
We, the people, also have the responsibility to work with our parliamentarians to translate international commitments into legislation, for them to prioritize this issue and give it the highest level of the political attention it deserves in our different contexts and in our countries, because they have the mandate to translate this into legislation, as I said, into coordination and follow-up for implementation.
And I think my key message as a negotiator here is to encourage my colleagues from the European Union, but also the colleagues from all of the other parties to make the most and achieve this agreement on indicators here, and not let it go, because that's exactly the message also to the finance we should be sending, that we are there to decide on the indicators. We managed to do it here in Belém as we were supposed to, and that's then the message that we are as I think you have both been addressing really well, what is the meaning of them for also in order to get this attention of the finance to our topics. So let's encourage them to do the decision just here in Belém.
Thank you. Encourage and support. Any other question? Yes, please. I think we have time for just one more.
Thank you. I'll be brief. My name is Christopher Nicholas. I'm an assistant professor at Tufts University in Boston, Massachusetts, in the U.S. My question, it was briefly, if tangentially addressed, but it's around ensuring that the indicators, how to balance ensuring that they're not overly onerous on the countries themselves. And I'm asking that in light of the various hats you wear, because obviously you have to account for objectivity in the science and ensuring that it it is comparable across countries, but then you have to also have to account for lived experiences, farmers, who's supplying the data, who's collecting them, etc. So how, whether it's a process perspective or a science perspective or a policy perspective or on the ground, how you're accounting for that in this overall process.
Thank you very much. Who would like to take that?
I can do that, but would also be a good question for FAO, I think. But I think, I mean, there you are. For the balance, I mean, the whole process of how the indicators have been developed has been, as Anna was also mentioning earlier, a very long process. We had this expert group with science and also other organizations like FAO working on this indicators to find the real balance. So this was a long consultation, and now within the negotiations, parties can, of course, raise their doubts if they find themselves not in the position to really deliver on these indicators that are suggested now by the expert group. So this would be my answer to this. I'm not sure if you want to add.
Just to add, not to use an example of GGA because it's on the discussion, but under the UNCCD there was a science policy interface and they were looking at land degradation neutrality. So what is an indicator of land degradation neutrality? First, you have to define what is land neutrality. You have different ways. So scientists will tell you something. Policymaker will tell you something else. So you need to find an agreement on to go down. And for instance, you can say, okay, I want to give you another example, percentage of sustainable agriculture. Okay. What is a percentage? You know what it is. Sustainable agriculture, you will have to define. As soon you will have defined that, you have to go to the ground and to see what are the metrics that you will be able to capture, to blend that you will respond to that question. And this is why we need the science. We need the science on the metric. And we need also the science to transform some indicators that are sometimes qualitative in something that we're also able to report. So it's all working together. So that's why you have the GGA that is here under the UNFCCC's policy, and IPCC will work on fine-tuning, hopefully, on providing a way to then how to do that. And we need the science at all the different levels.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you for the questions. Unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time, and I do want to ask for one last reflection from Lucy before we wrap up. But let's definitely continue the conversation. We'll be here for a couple of minutes, so if there's something you would like to add to the panelists, I'm sure you can after the panel. Without further ado, Lucy, what are your reflections on the panel? Is there something you would like to add as a wrap-up?
Okay, thank you so much. And maybe a round of applause to the fantastic panelists. I think they were... Yeah, I think the examples are really exciting. We had... my expectations that I had for this panel have totally been met. It was good to hear about the progress that is made in the negotiation rooms, but also to hear the country examples with developing indicators for your strategy, and even how you're already thinking about how they will be operationalized. And I think for me, there are three things that stood out. So first is the general principle that indicators are very useful tools because they help us to tell the story of climate change adaptation. They help us to understand how are people affected by climate change, how are they adapting, and how effective is the adaptation? And indicators are only a tool. They indicate. We cannot treat indicators as an end. They are a means to an end. So at the end of the day, even at COP, once we agree on the indicators and hopefully we get something that we can adopt and take home, at the end of the day, we still need to make sure that they can be operationalized. And with that, there was a very important also theme that was coming out about the connections with the different pieces. So if we think about the different scales, it's not only thinking about indicators for the global level, it's also how they can be operationalized at the national level through our national adaptation plans, but it's also how relevant are they to the farm level and how are they helping to capture the experiences of the farmers. And also very importantly, with these connections between the different pieces is the connections between the different knowledge systems. I think we've had a very strong voice from the science, but we also need to think about the indigenous knowledge. How can we integrate it when we are operationalizing the indicators? And of course, the further work that is required, I think he brought it very clearly with the work of the IPCC and the plan update of the technical guidelines that would help to even develop method and showcase methodologies that can be used to measure the various aspects that have been highlighted through the indicators. But finally, you cannot measure what is not happening. So at the end of the day, even with the indicators, we still need the means of implementation to make sure that we have the necessary financing, capacity building, technology transfer to help us as a global community advance adaptation across our different scales. But then it's also linking back to the indicators because they need to signal where do we need to put the money. So it's again coming back full circle, and really thank you for the various examples and really great insights. Thanks.
Thank you, Lucy. Yeah, and like if I would have to summarize everything into one sentence, maybe indicators only matter and are successful if they connect to the implementation and lived reality of the people on the ground, right? And that's the way that we have to go. And I think we've had many reflections from many different sides of this process here at COP30. So thank you really all for joining. And I think there's a lot that we can take with us from this panel and also to inform the ongoing negotiations. Before I close, I do want to thank the co-hosts of this panel. So this was a joint initiative by Action Against Hunger, Germany, WWF, FAO, and Alliance Biodiversity SIAT, as well as ADRA. So greetings to the co-hosts. Thank you for putting all of this together. Thank you a lot to the German Pavilion for making this happen. And yeah, we will see you in the negotiating rooms. Right, thank you.
Global Multidão, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Pavilion.